Well, welcome everyone to the How to Attract the Next Workforce with Automation and Robotics. This is going to be more of a conversation than a presentation, and we encourage comments and really Q&A questions as we go through this presentation. We're going to also have some polls, so be at your keyboard ready to join us. But let's go ahead and get going. So I'm Jake Hall. I'm the manufacturing millennial. I am a industry influencer online and a huge industry advocate around manufacturing and skilled trades. And I am also a business development manager at Fine Zelstra. And with me is Chris Lueke. Chris, introduce yourself.
Hello, it's good to see many of you again after our initial interview to kick things off this morning. I've been part of some of the sessions since then. So good to see everyone again. My name's Chris Lueke, host of the Manufacturing Happy Hour podcast. In addition to that, we mentioned it earlier, but I've been in the manufacturing industry for a little over 10 years. Started off as an engineer at Anheuser-Busch, worked for a long time for Rockwell Automation, and now I'm also a regional business leader at Fix Software, helping manufacturers really manage and streamline their maintenance processes through what I call a gateway drug into digital transformation for those that are trying to make that leap. So excited to see everyone again.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris and I, we're very active on social media. Just to put some numbers behind our name, we have a combined follower count of about 40,000 people who follow us on social media and have over 25 million views on our shared content. So we love advocating and talking about manufacturing. We're going to kick things off right away with an audience question. So if you have a question, we're going to go ahead and open up the polls here and unhide the poll. And what we're going to be talking about is, what is your biggest workforce challenge? As we talk about the workforce, we want to know, is it, people you just simply can hire, but they won't stay at your manufacturing facility? You can't find the people for the right skills. No one gets excited about what you do. Or is it a combination of everything? All right, polls are rolling in. We'll go ahead and give this a few more seconds. Chris, for you seeing in the industry, what is the biggest challenge that you're seeing when it regards to workforce?
If I'm going to pick one out of this list, I would say it's finding the right skills, hire people, but they won't stay. You know what? I'm going to go with A right now,
Okay.
At least in my segment of the industry. And you and I both came up in the automation industry, right? I think it's because once someone becomes, let's say, an expert in robotics, for example.
Yeah.
There are so few experts in robotics right now, industrial robots that I'm talking about, right? Fanuc, Epson, you can think of the big names. They're in such high demand that, there are a couple things in play. They have options, right? People need them. They can't fill all the roles that are there. But also, the people that I see coming out on top right now are the ones that have a strong culture in place to maintain someone like that. Milo and I talked about that earlier today in our conversation of, hey, what type of culture should people look for, right? So if I had to pick one out of that list right now, I'd go with A. What about yourself?
Yeah, I picked B. I think we can't find the people with the right skill sets is a huge thing right now that we're facing in the industry, especially when we're talking about the silver tsunami later on with everyone retiring. A lot of those skills and a lot of that knowledge is retiring with it. So a lot of the results, B was the big takeaway. There was some all of the above answers as well, but we appreciate your feedback. So let's go ahead and jump into the next question. And that has to do with, why is the next workforce such an important thing? Well, by 2028, they're estimating that there's going to be 2.4 million unfulfilled jobs in the manufacturing industry. And this is a result of a lot of people, what we call the silver tsunami wave of people retiring that have been in the industry for decades. They're going to be retiring, and those jobs aren't going to be fulfilled by the next decade of the millennials and Gen Zs growing up. And then on top of that, it's just due to industry growth. We're going to be seeing a lot of new jobs with a lot of new technologies that are growing manufacturing, and we just simply don't have the workforce to be able to feed that growth. And of course, this is a study by Deloitte. I would highly recommend you checking that out. And it was also by the Department of Labor. So those are some really interesting numbers when it comes to the industry. Chris, you want to talk about the myths that we're facing in manufacturing?
Yeah, so there are 3 Ds that we talk about. There's actually a 4th D on here as well. And you know what? I was thinking back to Anna's keynote presentation earlier about how manufacturing is kind of, the parallels between manufacturing and the tech industry. And I think this all goes back to a branding issue that the manufacturing industry tends to have sometimes, right? We think of these dirty, dark, dangerous jobs when really, at the end of the day, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in our industry that all of you are working on as well. I think it's just a way of like kind of rephrasing the branding a little bit, right? Like Anna was talking about, hey, in tech, there's servers, in manufacturing, there are factories, in tech, there's apps, manufacturing, we have products. And then lastly, metrics, we have traceability metrics, telemetry, all of that. But on top of that, we have supply chains we need to work on, right? So if we can get out of this dirty, dark, dangerous 3Ds world that we're in, that some people think of it, and really rebrand it along the lines of, hey, we're like tech, but we solve cooler, more complex problems. I almost think that's part of the solution there, right? And then dull. And that's the last thing that we are in this industry, right? Yeah. Anything that we're working on has so many complexities, so many different things you need to consider, so many different groups you need to work amongst, operations, production, design. Everyone needs to coordinate. So, I look at it partially as a branding issue, right? And really highlighting some of those things that, I think Anna talking about in a different way earlier, but looking at it as, hey, how do we make manufacturing cool? That's what we need to be focused on right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's the innovation that's removing the dull around, manufacturing that was viewed for so long as an industry that, was this, it's what your grandparents did. It's not what you're going to do growing up. So what do the millennials and Gen Zs look for with manufacturing? We're talking about breaking the stereotypes of manufacturing. Let's talk about breaking the stereotypes of the millennials and Gen Zs that a lot of times we're viewed at as the industry on. I think when you look at beyond just a paycheck, and that's what these future workforces are looking for, is they're looking for something beyond just what's going to pay them the most. They're looking for, where do they find meaning in their work? A lot of times we have these conversations that millennials are just entitled. Well, I would counter that and say millennials feel very empowered with being able to make decisions and being able to decide what their future looks like. And with their future work, they want to see meaning in what they're doing. And I think that's one thing that manufacturers have a hard time commuting on, is it's not just a product that manufacturers are making. There's a purpose behind your product. How are you impacting people's lives through manufacturing and the products that you are making? I think that's a really big thing. I think it's also one of those things that we view work as an achievement in a way. We want to be part of a greater goal than just showing up work from an 8-to-5 job, making parts and going home. Millennials want to be part of change. They want to be part of something bigger. So how are you facing achievement orientation within their products? I'm not talking about achievement where everyone just gets a participation trophy. I'm talking about how are they directly impacting the company to help grow it. The other thing as well is millennials and Gen Zs are highly educated, and they view information as a power. They have the ability, with us growing up with cell phones, to get access to information almost instantly and to learn things very quickly. When we're talking about highly education, something really interesting we're talking about later on in the presentation, I have a 3D printer behind me. We learn, last year there was 16 million 3D printers sold in the US to households, to people living at home. People are adapting and picking up new technology and learning it because it's interesting and it's fun. People can go out and buy a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino board and teach themselves how to program watching a Twitch or a YouTube stream. So we are highly educated in the area of adapting new technologies and looking at manufacturing as a way to continue to educate ourselves beyond just a job. Let's talk about, attracting the workforce, Chris. What should manufacturers look at when, they're posting a job or doing an interview? What are you seeing there?
Well, I think it goes back to your slide before this, and also I'm reflecting on a conversation you and I just had at an event with Michael Sullivan, Miller Resource Group, part of a recruiting firm. And they're talking about, hey, when we post job descriptions anymore, it's not necessarily just about what's the experience, what's the pay. It's really, hey, what does the impact that this organization has? Same things you were just saying, right? What are you doing for the environment to improve well-being? Or how does your product, even though how far removed it might seem from like the consumer aspect of it, if you're making a particular part for an automobile, how do you describe the impact that that has to something important, something environmental, something cool? I think that's one of the big areas that we're seeing some changes in the right direction to get, Jake and I both fall into the millennial category, but to get millennials, Gen Z, the next generation to look at these areas as career paths they can get excited about, not just as their first job out of college or their first job out of trade school or high school, but something that can be a viable career path for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're looking at, the company in the hiring process, I think it's important for you to share beyond just, hey, this is what we're doing from an 8 to 5 job. This is our company's purpose. This is the culture we believe in. This is the do good strategy. As I always like to ask manufacturers, what are you doing beyond just making a product that's impacting your community? If it's through sustainability, if it's through, outreach to inner city communities to get them involved with new opportunities so they can grow. I think the other big thing is, how is your company moving forward digitally? When we're talking about attracting the next workforce with automation, if you're a company that's still not automating and has the same manual processes that you've had in the 1980s, that's not exciting for a millennial or a Gen Z. For us who are so encapsulated by technology being a part of our daily lives, from creating lists to learning new information to being educated digitally, if their lives are on the digital platform, but then they go and work for a manufacturing company that's 30 years old, that's still using, 3-ring binder setup instructions for a job, that's not exciting. And I think it's important for us to show how you're moving forward digitally, because if you're moving forward digitally and you're investing in new technologies, that's also showing that you're investing in your new workforce. Chris, let's go ahead and go ahead and open up this next question. I'm going to open up the poll if you want to ask the audience.
Yeah. So next question we have here is, how automated is your current manufacturing process? Is it really automated? It's almost lights out. B, is it a huge part of our process? C, hey, are we just getting started with this? Or D, we don't really have a lot, right? Automation, what's that? So excited to see some of the responses on this. Jake, as people are filing it in, what's the sense you get, right? You work with a systems integration company, right? Yep. You get to see the spectrum of where people land. I'd love to hear where you're finding people in the process.
Yeah, I think it reflects the size of the business, right? When we're looking at large Fortune, 100 or 500 manufacturers, they're seeing a lot of automation being integrated into their manufacturing processes because they have literally a full team behind them when it comes to integrating those solutions. Now, when you look at other companies like small to medium-sized businesses, which reflect 95% of the manufacturers in the industry, we don't see a lot of companies being able to adapt automation like they once wanted to, or that they want to, because they're so focused on the aspects of running a company. They don't have the ability to leverage automation how they want to.
I think part of it comes down to risk as well, right? And we're seeing a lot of companies help smaller to mid-sized businesses de-risk that investment in automation, right? For people that fall into that C category, before, to automate, you used to need to buy a control panel, a product line, or a robot for some sort of application. Yeah. Now with some of these as a service models that, again, we see all these things coming over from the tech and software world and coming into the manufacturing space. Now you have robotics as a service, machine as a service, all these things that, will allow, I think, let's say some of those small to medium size manufacturers go from C to C to B
Yeah.
in that spectrum.
Absolutely. And it looks like a lot of the results came back in where a lot of companies are just getting started with automation as well. Chris, you want to dive in? What is Industry 4.0? I think it's an important thing for us to understand. Where does automation and robotics fit on this spectrum? And why, when we talk about the solutions of Industry 4.0, is it important for manufacturers to understand what these look like?
So the first thing I'll say is Industry 4.0 can be an overused term, right? So we want to get down to the roots of what Industry 4.0 really is, because if you pay close attention, a lot of people are already starting to throw out the term Industry 5.0, which, we won't go there yet, but it refers to, hey, Industry 1.0, the industrial revolution, right? Steam power, mechanized processes. Industry 2.0, the assembly line, mass production, Henry Ford, going back to that point. Industry 3.0 is where you start getting these physical systems, right? Where it's more automation, the programmable logic controller making its introduction. And then Industry 4.0 is when you have all these automated processes, but now they're being brought together by the internet, by communication that allows what were once a bunch of disparate systems an opportunity to connect with one another.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pass it back to you as you explain some of the facets about this as well.
I think Industry 4.0 is really exciting because, as you mentioned, Chris, 4.0 is more of a cultural change than a product change. And by being able to integrate these solutions, like I mentioned behind me, additive manufacturing or augmented reality, autonomous robotics, a lot of these solutions are new technologies that generations are growing up with. Augmented reality is common, right? I have an augmented reality headset behind me that I use. I have an additive manufacturing printer behind me that I use. We're the idea of Internet of Things and connected devices to the cloud to store information. That's something that we're doing in our households right now. I can go behind me and turn off the lights on and off of my office just by clicking on my cell phone. I could say, hey, I'm going to turn off the workbench behind me. And those lights go on, those lights go off. The interconnected device is what's making manufacturing exciting again. I think that's one of those things that manufacturing to look at. Not only are these making your processes more efficient, but it's attracting that next workforce that is used to those technologies. And I think it's important to understand too that a lot of manufacturers view automation and robotics as a risk because they say, I don't know how to program a robot. I don't know how to integrate these solutions. Digital work-based instructions, I wouldn't even know how to start creating an app or uploading my information to that. But who is familiar with it? It's millennials and Gen Zs who are comfortable with that technology, who are comfortable with creating videos and conversations. And you want to have a video-based work instruction. So when a person loads up a job, they scan a barcode and up pops the 3-minute video that guides them step-by-step how to set up this new machine to run a part. That's what's exciting. And that's how you can talk about getting a younger generation involved with your manufacturing processes. Not only are you getting them involved, but you're educating them on the knowledge that your older workforce has. So now you can have the ability for a younger generation who loves technology and an older generation who has all this knowledge to work together. And as a manufacturer, you're creating value because that, silver tsunami that's retiring, they might be retiring, but the knowledge is staying at your company. And
it's a great,
and I think
it's a great, it's extremely important, right? We had a couple comments and folks laughing about the silver tsunami comment earlier, and others saying it's like, hey, I may be in this generation, but I'm still sticking around, right? So, you're right. Those generations have a ton of knowledge. We're storing it in these new systems that are part of Industry 4.0, right? I use the example all the time. You can do your maintenance. You can organize your plant maintenance inside of a spreadsheet, or you can put it into a cloud-based system where you can access it from your phone on the factory floor and access videos and work instructions like you're talking about, led by some of your senior members. So everything that was all that knowledge that's been there for a long time can stay there, even after people retire.
Absolutely. So we have about 10 minutes left. Let's go ahead and dive into some videos and examples that I want to share, that Chris and I want to share with the community on what some of these new technologies look like. So one of the first things that we're seeing here is projected augmented reality. So we're seeing projected light going on an automotive component. And this is guiding an operator through a manual process that isn't fully automated through inspection, through vision systems that don't have that capability, but they're checking all these different quality parts. But what's really nice about this is, let's say you have a low-skilled worker that doesn't understand all the aspects of a inspection area or an assembly process or manually putting components together. You can have a pre-built system that's not only a training device, but it's a device that's going to allow that operator to do a 100% quality inspection manual operation being guided digitally by a new tool, which is projected augmented reality. So this is being used in a bunch of industries, from aerospace to food and bev to automotive. That is, the type of technology that's out there that we're seeing. Here's another example. Chris, how about you dive into this one?
Yeah, so we're going to look at wearables now in a couple different examples. The first ones we're looking at are exoskeletons, right, for ergonomics. So looking at the type of positions that people are in versus the type of positions that people should be in as they're doing their work. Jake talked earlier about how younger generations have reprioritized what's important in life. And it's not just, work to make a living. It's, hey, I want to be able to work, but I need the energy to go backpacking and snowboarding and do all these other things on the weekend that I enjoy. And what these things do is it allows people to be in more natural positions when they're doing their work on the factory floor versus creating gradual ailments that build up over time that would prevent someone to being at max physical health. And this is a really cool solution. I've got to try this one out before. There are gloves that allow you to grip, so that are grip assist gloves. At the end of the day, if you're doing a lot of picking and placing, there are gloves that allow you to move that. They do some force assists like you're seeing right there. You also saw some wearables, right? Someone holding a scanner right on their arm as well. Kind of like, I don't know if you think back to some of the old wearables for video games and things like that. So a lot of parallels between things we experience in our regular life and why we're doing things out on the factory floor now that we might not have done in the past.
Yep, absolutely. And so another example that we're looking at here is autonomous welding. So here we have a collaborative robot that is being used to weld what we look at as a low volume, high variable part. Robotics welding isn't something new. In fact, a lot of the first robots to ever be integrated were for welding applications in the automotive industry. But what we're seeing now in terms of new technology and robotics is the ability to quickly program set points on components and have a system do welding automatically for you. So even if you have a part that maybe only has 50 or 100 runs, you could easily justify leveraging robotic welding, or in this case, collaborative robotic welding, where the operator can literally grab that robot, teach, hey, here's the starting point, here's the ending point, and then it will know the seam that it needs to follow. So for where we're at in the industry, where there's currently 450,000 welders in the industry right now, well, the average age of those welders is 55 years old. You're going to be seeing a lot of welders retiring in the next 10 to 15 years, and that skill and that knowledge is going away. Well, we want to advocate skilled trades as much as possible, but even advocating skilled trades, there's still going to be a massive demand for these type of manufacturing operations. So that's how automation and robotics is solving those issues.
Here's a fun one. So what you're looking at pick and place robots for sorting mail, right? Going back to what we talked about earlier, with dull, dirty, dangerous jobs, right? Let's focus on the dull, right? No one wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I want to sort mail all day for the next 40 years of my life. What companies like Plus One Robotics have done, they've done AI guided robots that can sort between the different types of shapes and take on the work that someone used to do. And by the way, I want to highlight something really important. You still see people walking around near this process, right? Following safety protocols, of course. But there are new roles that are created as a result of robots, right? You have crew chiefs, as Plus One Robotics calls them, people that make sure the process is running optimally, people that look for new ways to automate and make sure everything on the line is working as it should. Because at the end of the day, the robots are only as smart as the people behind them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another example of people and operators working together. This is a company by Nordbow Robotics, and this is using a mimic software. So an operator who's doing a polishing or a sanding, or in this case, we see a spray or painting application. The person, instead of programming a robot through a typical teach pendant, is the ability to teach the robot these motions that are repetitive just by following the operator's hand. So now you can do very quick programming of, like I said, low volume, high flexible parts using and leveraging automation and robotics to make the job and task of operators' lives easier. You know, as we wrap up the last 5 minutes, I think there's a few fun takeaways that we want to hit. Investing locally in community colleges and trade shows is really what's next for manufacturers. How are manufacturers finding their talent? Well, their talent's local, and you need to invest in your talent locally by telling them what skills, what trades they need to learn, what, you know, skill set, if it's PLC programming or if it's robotics program. All those skills are something that manufacturers need to be investing locally to attract that talent. You know, a couple of other things that we're going to be having is Chris and I, we're going to be talking at a lot more events this year. So if you want to see us in person, we're going to be in Anaheim, California at an in-person event, and also in Detroit, Michigan at Automate. So we would love for you guys to catch us in person. And as we wrap up a few more things, you know, quick shout out. Thank you to Instrumental for allowing us to put this presentation on. We hope everyone here was able to walk away with something they learned from either it's the idea or focus that we're doing on the workforce, or how we want to get millennials and Gen Zs excited about manufacturing with these new technologies. But also, you know, thank you to Find Zelstra and to Fix. You know, with our day jobs still allowing us to pursue our passion for sharing manufacturing and creating podcasts and sharing and highlighting manufacturing videos, a big shout out to them as well.
I'd just like to add, hey, we'd love to hang out with you at these events. I know there are, you know, people from around the world that have been here at Build Better today. Would love to see you if you're out on the West Coast, down in California or Midwest, or flying in from somewhere to Detroit for the Automate show. If you want to follow us on social media, you can scan the respective codes we have up there. Jake and I are both super active on LinkedIn. If you want to continue this conversation, LinkedIn is a great spot to do it. Our email addresses are up there. And more than anything, I just want to thank Anna, Kristen, the entire team at Instrumental. You know, gosh, Jake, I think it was like half a year ago, I got to know Anna through a podcast that we did with her. And, you know, it's always wonderful collaborating with this group. So thank you, Christina, everyone at Instrumental, for the opportunity, and hope everyone had some good takeaways from today.
Absolutely. You know, while we have 2 minutes left, of course, we're going to ask you guys at 8:05 to head back to the main stage. Chris, what are you most excited for with manufacturing in 2022?
I just like there's energy in this industry now that we've seen in other industries. We talked about tech earlier, but, you know, if you looked at all those travel influencers that were, you know, running around Instagram for a while, now there are actually like manufacturing influencers out there. And Anna made a great comment in the post. She's like, hey, we need more manufacturing videos like this out there to get people excited about it, right? Like that compilation we showed there, like if more companies would do that, we could change the perspective around manufacturing, get out of these 3Ds, the dull, dirty, dangerous jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think the biggest thing is we're going to see a lot more adaptation of artificial intelligence and robotics working together. And that's going to create a lot more opportunity, not only with our standard robotics applications of typical pick and placing or palletizing or pre-programmed operations, but we're going to see a lot more analog, flexible operations by leveraging robotics into manufacturing, really helping address those jobs that are high labor, high turnover rates for manufacturing. Well, once again, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Jake Hall, the Manufacturing Millennial, and Chris Lueke with the Manufacturing Happy Hour podcast. We're going to ask you now to go back to the main stage as we close out the rest of the event. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.